He arrived in Canada with almost nothing. He left with a billion-dollar empire, a place in the Order of Canada, and his name on some of the most famous racetracks in the world. And he is on trial for rape. Most people outside of Canada and the auto industry have never heard the name Frank Stronach. But in certain circles, business, horse racing, Canadian politics, the name carries enormous weight. In 1957, he rented a small garage in Toronto and opened a one-man tool and die shop. He worked 16-hour days. He slept on a cot in the corner of the shop. That garage became Multimatic Investments Limited, which became Magna Electronics, which became, in 1973, Magna International. By 2008, Magna was the largest automotive parts supplier in North America. Annual sales topped $20 billion. The company employed 172,000 people across 450 manufacturing sites in 28 countries. Frank Stronach, the boy who slept on a cot in a Toronto garage, was worth over $1 billion. He owned racetracks. He bred thoroughbred horses. He was one of the most celebrated immigrant success stories in Canadian history. On June 7th, 2024, Peel Regional Police announced that Frank Stronach had been arrested and charged. Initially, 5 charges. Then, on June 26th, police announced 8 more. By the end of 2024, the total had reached 18 charges, involving 13 complainants. The women's names are protected under a court publication ban, but their stories paint a pattern, many of them working for Stronach in some capacity. Horse grooms at his stables, employees at Magna, young women at bars and restaurants he owned. One of the complainants is also suing him in a separate civil case. Her name is Jane Boone. She alleges he assaulted her in 1986 when she was a teenage co-op student at Magna International. She is seeking over $4 million in damages. In a now widely referenced opinion piece, Boone addressed what many people were saying privately. Yes, she wrote, she is in it for the money. And then she explained why. Because she had been 20 years old. Because she had reported it and nothing happened. Because the only language, she argued, that powerful men truly understand is the one that costs them something. Frank Stronach, through his lawyer Brian Greenspan, categorically denied all allegations. In August 2024, Stronach broke his silence. He sat down with host Mark Kelly and said, "I did nothing wrong." He claimed his accusers were after his money. "We have a lot of data which will totally prove those things are lies," he said. And in a line that drew widespread attention, "I feel sorry for the women that made those charges." He did not deny knowing the complainants. He denied the acts. In December 2024, Stronach chose to have his case heard by a jury. Then, in June 2025, he changed course, switching to a judge-alone trial. The Crown consented. The Toronto trial was expected to begin on February 3, 2026. It was delayed. The defense said they needed more time to handle a significant influx of new materials. Frank Stronach, 93 years old, arrived at the courthouse in Toronto. He sat through every day of the proceedings. He did not testify. The first complainant to take the stand, identified only as LS under the publication ban, described going to Rooney's, a Toronto restaurant Stronach owned, to celebrate her birthday with 2 other horse grooms who worked at his stables. Stronach, she said, came over with a bottle of champagne. Her next clear memory was being on the dance floor, with Stronach touching her without her consent. She described him as being, in her words, like an octopus. He seemed to be all over me. She told the court she had gaps in what happened next. She later woke up in an unfamiliar apartment bedroom, disoriented, with no memory of how she had gotten there. She testified that she could see her face in a mirrored ceiling above her, and that Stronach was on top of her, raping her. She eventually went to police in 2015, nearly 35 years after the alleged assault. A second complainant, a woman now 63 years old, described a similar sequence. Stronach's restaurant, an interaction that turned physical, a cot in his condo. She testified she felt pinned down, no way out. She felt paralyzed, she said, and let him do what he wanted to do. Days after the incident, she received a call from someone at Magna International, offering her a job interview. Here is where the story takes a complicated turn. As the weeks of testimony went on, the Crown's case began to shrink. 5 of the charges were withdrawn by the prosecution during the trial itself, not dismissed by the judge, but pulled by the Crown. As the complainants struggled in their testimony, memories that had seemed solid in police interviews appeared less certain under cross-examination. Dates shifted. With LS, the first complainant, she zeroed in on a single shifting detail: the year of the alleged assault. In 2015, when LS first went to police, she said it was 1980. After Stronach's arrest in 2024, she gave media interviews describing the same year. Then in court, she said 1981. Shemesh suggested the date changed because Stronach may not have been in Canada in 1980. LS denied that, saying she had simply never been certain of the year. Justice Malloy ultimately ruled that LS's evidence was so unreliable, it was, in her words, fatally flawed and could not serve as the basis for a conviction. The charges connected to LS were effectively shelved. As of May 2026, here is exactly where this case stands. The Toronto trial concluded its hearing of evidence. Justice Anne Malloy is now writing her decision. She told the court on the final day, "It's a very difficult decision to write." The ruling is expected at a hearing on June 19th, 2026. What she is deciding? 5 charges, 3 complainants, offenses alleged to have taken place between 1977 and the early 1980s, including rape. The second trial, in Newmarket, Ontario, deals with 6 charges involving 6 different complainants, alleged incidents that took place in York Region near Aurora, where Magna International has its headquarters. The dates there range from 1988 all the way to February 2024, just months before Stronach's arrest. That trial was originally set for later in 2026. It has now been postponed to May 2027. Stronach will be 94 years old when that trial begins. And separately, the civil lawsuit filed by Jane Boone continues in parallel to both criminal trials. Boone alleges she was a teenage co-op student at Magna in 1986 when Stronach assaulted her. Her claim seeks over $4 million, plus punitive damages. Civil cases require a lower standard of proof than criminal ones, not beyond reasonable doubt, but on the balance of probabilities. That distinction could be significant. This case raises questions that go well beyond Frank Stronach. How do you prosecute a crime that allegedly happened 45 years ago? In Canada, there is no statute of limitations on serious indictable offenses. Someone can be charged, tried, and potentially convicted for something that happened in 1977. That principle exists precisely because powerful people often rely on time to protect them. The verdict comes in June. We will be here. The Toronto verdict is expected on June 19th, 2026. The Newmarket trial is scheduled for May 2027. The civil case is ongoing. If you want this case broken down the moment the verdict drops, subscribe. We will be first. Like this video if you want us to keep covering cases that other people aren't talking about. See you in the next one.